Robschild. No investment advice. Welcome to Robschild's special edition. Let's talk about gold. Today is August 24th, 2024, and today's essential question is gold undervalued or overvalued? We're going to be talking about these four items here, and then what conclusions we might be able to draw from these four items, starting with popularity, then liquidity, then demographics, then supply and demand of gold versus dollars. If you've noticed a large uptick in the amount of gold videos popping up on YouTube, gold bullish sentiment seeming like it's everywhere, well, you're not alone. In addition to my own recent YouTube experience, I wanted to check out Google Trends. It's a great way to see what people are looking up on the internet. Amazing tool to see what is popular right now. If you see this dotted line here, you can see a huge spike at the end. This chart goes back to 2004, 100. On this chart is like max popularity, and 50 is like medium popularity, 0 is like zero popularity, and this goes back to 2004, and as you can see, we never ever really get much, we hardly ever even get up into the 80s. If we adjust this chart to look at the past 90 days, we can see why the end of that chart has that large spike there. You can see on August 10th, 2024, we reached the 100% mark, the most popular this chart has ever gotten, apparently. I'm a little confused at how this does the data, because we see when we go to the past 7 days, the whole chart is above 75, going between 75 and 100, so I'm not sure what's going on with that. But the bigger point here is that we've had a recent massive uptick in the interest of the term people searching for gold on Google, making it very popular across the web right now. So with popularity, there's really two arguments to be made here. It's possible gold can increase in price because of it becoming more and more popular in people's minds, and maybe everyone's going to be buying gold now, at least temporarily. It could at least temporarily drive the gold price upwards. However, in my experience and knowledge of things getting really popular, those moments tend to mark peaks in a lot of markets as well, and so it will be very interesting to see in the very short term what happens to the price of gold. The liquidity of gold is a little bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, we've experienced quite an increased situation of liquidity of gold, namely the affordability and ease of getting exposure to gold. These days, brokerage accounts, you can trade these ETFs with zero cost. You can get direct exposure to the cost of gold through that, and also through, I believe there's a gold-backed altcoin. But on the other hand, where's your gold? It's not in your hand. Still exists as another claim to gold as far as I'm concerned. A big key part of this discussion is demographics, and I believe this plays into a strong bearish case for gold, for the price of gold to drop. For one, birth rates are fairly low right now. Some people consider them to be below the replacement rate, meaning we're headed into a situation where there's actually less people, especially in the United States. But even more so, less middle class, less upper class, less people that are going to be wanting gold in the first place. And then once you have the gold, Who are you going to sell it to? Your other rich friends who can, hoard more gold? The demographics situation, in my estimation, lays out a pretty bearish case for gold. Before we move on to the supply and demand of gold and dollars, think of the supply and demand of people versus gold. Less people, more gold. It's not that difficult to figure that out. So moving on to the supply and demand of gold versus dollars, and I put 33 and 66% here. I'll show you what I mean. So what I'm going to do is look at what's happened since 2020, before the COVID crash and everything kind of went haywire. All right, let's assume that the fair price of gold is $1,500 an ounce, and today it's currently at $2,500 an ounce. That's an increase of 66%. For that to make sense in my book, I would want to see a similar incline in the supply of dollars. Because if this is priced in dollars, if you have more dollars, then yeah, gold should be worth a larger portion of those dollars. So where are we on dollars? Well, the M2 money supply in 2020, before the crazy fiscal spending and all this money was created, we were at 15,000, this is like 15 trillion, I guess, would be the M2 money supply. And then we peaked around 21.7 trillion. We actually went down a little bit. We're around 21 trillion right now. So that's an increase of about 33%. So what gives? The price of gold goes up by 66%, while the supply of dollars only went up by 33%. Interesting. That would suggest to me, just by those two metrics alone, that gold has kind of gone a little too far here. Now, certainly, if the money supply were to continue to skyrocket from here, especially considering that we're looking at cuts right now, the first cut looking like it's going to be coming next month, if this can grow, but as of right now, gold is actually a little bit ahead of itself in my book. I mean, if you compare the 66 and the 33, it might be 33% overvalued. I think that from 2020 until now, an acceptable price would be about $2,000 an ounce, not $2,500 an ounce. I also want to mention in this segment that very recently, the M2 money supply has actually gone down. And this is extremely rare for this to occur. If this were to go down further, it would suggest that we are headed into some very major deflationary times, which are possible right now. As much as everyone is hitting the drum and screaming inflation is coming, and gold's going to go to $9,000 an ounce, everyone seems to be wrong all the time. It's one of my phrases I like to repeat. We all thought that inflation was transitory until it wasn't. Now we think inflation is going to be here forever until it isn't. Currently, the M2 money supply is actually showing some scary things going on. This doesn't go down, by the way, except for like the Great Depression. This only goes back to 1960. But as you can see in this chart, if I just zoom in on various parts of this, it never ever goes down. It only goes up. And so for us to actually be in a period where we go up and then we go up less, but we never go down. We very recently went down in the M2 money supply. So historic times we're living in my estimation, and this puts further probability and pressure on the price of gold to actually drop from here. Even without the M2 money supply decreasing, very notably, this is a 100-year chart of nominal prices of gold through history. I think it's very important to note that there are periods where gold does not just keep going up and up and up. In fact, if you looked from when we got off the gold standard in 1970 through 1980, yes, that was a unbelievable run, much like what I see going on right now, right here. This is an unbelievable run from 2000 until 2024. This 24-year little chunk of time here is just, it's very similar, right? We have, what is this? It's a tenfold upward price a tenfold increase in the price of gold in a relatively short time span. Now, notably, from 1980, for the next 20 years, we did not see the same price. In fact, it took how long to get up to the same nominal price? It looks like it took about, what is this, 27 years? 27 years to get up to the same nominal price. And in terms of purchasing power, you wouldn't have, if you were buying gold in 1980, some of you out there watching this video may have done that and experienced this. And things like this can happen and do happen. Again, we had a major run-up in gold in 2011 before dropping by about almost 50% here within 3 years. So gold is very popular. Gold has been skyrocketing. I'm hearing all over the internet how it's just going to keep going higher and higher and higher. And you know what? It might. But I think it'll be very temporary. I don't know how high it'll go, but I do think that, it's inevitable that these peaks turn over. Every time we get one of these parabolic moves to the upside, they always follow by going the other way. From 1970 to 1980, I believe it's a 14 times return there. And then we had, like I said, 27 years of zero return, negative return. It was not fun to have gold from 1980 all the way to mid 2000s. And again, I'm going to repeat, this was without a contraction in the M2 money supply. So now we're going to go through some conclusions. Remember, our essential question is gold undervalued or overvalued? So, conclusions. Number 1, gold today is probably overvalued by at least 33% when you consider M2 money supply and the price of gold. One more piece I wanted to add to this part of the conversation. In 2020, gold was already pretty historically high at 1,500. If we scroll out, you can see from 2002, we had that surge in 2011, and the same price 10 years later. It was still, by most people's metrics, still, relatively high. And now we've gone up another 66% very recently. Now, again, I'm going to repeat, there's actually a good chance, as bearish as it sounds I am on gold, there's a good chance of gold price increasing, and I'm going to say temporarily. And this has to do with the fear of inflation and the popularity of gold right now. It's popular. Everybody's looking it up on the internet. It's all over. I scroll through YouTube. I swear half of the finance videos I see now are talking about how everybody should get gold. The price of gold is just going to go up, and inflation's going to go up forever. Everybody's going on one side of the boat right now, and they might be right, at least for a little bit here. I don't think it'll last. Fiscal and monetary reactions to the upcoming recession will control the price of gold. So remember, I'm talking about like a snapshot of what's going on right now. the real key is what's going to be happening in the future with the government spending money and where rates are going, what the Federal Reserve is going to do with the cost of borrowing money. The way that I'm looking at this is we just went through a sort of a historic inflationary cycle that we haven't seen since the 1970s, really. We haven't seen inflation spike up to whatever it was, 7-9% or something like that, for a very long time. The reason monetary policy was so easy and fiscal spending was so strong was because they thought, well, it doesn't matter. We could pour infinite amounts of money into the system and we're still not going to get inflation because it's never happened before. And then they got inflation. And just recently in Powell's talk, he discussed this. He said, okay, yeah, we were all thrown off guard by this happening, by inflation taking off here. So now what's going on? The mentality of the Federal Reserve and the government right now is, yes, inflation can happen and it is problematic. And so my best conclusion as to what I think will happen moving forward from here, from where we are exactly today in August of 2024, my best guess is a late and slow response to the upcoming slowdown, to the recession. We have the SOM rule triggered. We're starting a cutting cycle. My best guess is that we're going to be on the wrong side, this time. We have more fear of inflation than we have of the economy slowing down too much right now, and that's across the board. And therefore, it would make sense for the response to be late and slow, meaning that we are more likely headed into a deflationary period, meaning that the M2 money supply may continue to contract along with earnings, along with asset prices, along with interest rates, and along with the price of gold. Final conclusion, demographics combined with a slow response will likely shrink the price of gold with a 5-year time horizon. Again, if we get into this situation that I think we're headed into of stronger deflation, yes, there will be a stronger monetary response. It will probably be less strong than the cycle we just had with COVID, because they realized, okay, inflation went too far. We got to be careful here. I still think it's going to be a slower response than what it even should be this time. But, that's just me and my crystal ball. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching Robschild.